Okay, thank you, Sarah, and welcome to this small select group that are on today. My name is Yvonne McBride and I'm the manager at Partnership for Procurement. So collaboration is something that's very close to my heart, and in P4P we've worked with around 200 organisations over the years, helping them to develop their partnerships and consortia to bid for contracts. And that's been successful in the sense that most of them have won contracts, thankfully, but they've also been able to scale up and do more and do things differently across a wider geography in many cases because of that strength of partnership working and pooling resources. I'm delighted to be joined by Joan Bishop today from Dornoch Kick, and Joan's going to walk us through the experience that she's had and the organisation's had and the many developments around community-led tourism in Dornoch. The session is recorded and you'll be able to use the chat function for any comments or to post any questions, but we'll also have some time as well for some questions just at the end that you'll be able to ask Joan, or just points for discussion that you want to put into the room. It will be fairly informal since we've got a small number, so I'll just hand over to Joan now, and you can take it from there, Joan.
Okay, so can I share my screen? Where's my sound down? Hi everybody. I don't think I've been right to the end. We really started, I'm thinking overnight at about the year 2000, when there was a little grant going around, a European grant. We got £1,000 to set up the Visit Dornoch website. And we started talking to the businesses then, and in those days, the shops closed at lunchtime. They didn't take cards, and quite often they didn't actually smile. So the first thing we did is produce some Dornoch smile stickers, which we handed out to all the shops in the hope that they might get the message as they were sealing up the parcels. And that was quite successful. And we also set up the Skibo Customer Care Award. So we had prepaid postcards where visitors could say where they'd stayed or where they'd visited, and score people, and we had a dinner at the end and could celebrate that kind of success. So it was very low key on a low budget, but it still made a difference. And I have to say that after that, the shops all open at lunchtime and they all take cards, and most of them smile. In fact, I think we probably all smile now. So we feel we did get somewhere. But where we were really able to kind of leverage the campaign is because Highlands and Islands Enterprise decided that they would commission an economic master plan for Dornoch. And it was with that document that we really had the data to push on and get some grant funding and make things happen. Now I'm just going to see if this is going to work for us. So it was a big chunky document. I think it was about 80 pages long. So, you know, when you went to funders, this really made a difference. But the main things here about building the brand profile, increasing the number of visitors, making sure we're not just dependent on tourism. I know that's not the conversation for today, but it's important for us because you don't have all your eggs in the one basket. And just kind of working with, we've got UHI in town, you know, how could they help? Well, they certainly have a catering department to help training our staff and so on, and partnership delivery, which I didn't really quite understand what that meant at the time, but it came to me later. And within this, they developed a whole lot of priority projects or things that we might look at. And at the end of a 10-year period, 2023, then we're expected to be offering that kind of rich tourism product and so on, which I think we're just about going to achieve, which is good. So an action group was formed, and basically different community groups said they would take ownership of various projects that were in there. Now, at the time we started this, we had a very weak community council, and the kick was quite strong, so we ended up taking the majority of the projects on. But there was also a feeling that in some ways this had been parachuted in on us from high rather than being from the ground up. And we had these charrettes where they asked chairs of local groups to consult on this thing, but they didn't ask me, so clearly they hadn't done it properly. So we decided that we would do our own survey. So we, first of all, asked visitors over the first summer there, 2013 or maybe 14, can't quite remember now, and what their impressions were. And most people said, don't change anything. I love Dornoch, I love the beach, I love the golf course. I love the fact that people stop and chat to me and they've got the time, they'll tell me where their favourite walk was and so on. Well, if you really push me, I think the toilets could do with something. I have to tell you, it's taken from then until now that the toilets are getting done. We also went to accommodation providers because it's all very well, this document saying get more people, but if we haven't got anywhere to put them, well, what's the point? So we asked them to give us the basically occupancy rates over the season. And we were absolutely full, particularly self-catering in the summer months, as you would expect. But we dropped down more quickly than Highland as a whole, and certainly compared to Scotland. There's clearly work to be done there to see how can we drive people to come in kind of spring and autumn. And then we commissioned a company in Inverness to come and do a kind of blind shopping tour. So they're only allowed to go where the signs told them. So they found the car park, they found the toilets, probably not good news, but they never found the tourist information office. So clearly signage was an issue. And then we also asked our local community, well, what do they think was special about Dornoch? We tried to compare ourselves perhaps to Nairn or, you know, St Andrews of the North was another label we had at one time. And this kind of word cloud is the sorts of things that come out. So, you know, beach is really key, the golf course, the cathedral, friendly people and so on. And that all helped inform a marketing company who we then commissioned to get this branding together, you know, try and capture all these things. And what they came up with was quite obvious. Dornoch can do it all from here, the do of Dornoch. And why wouldn't we manage that ourselves, you know, paid all that money for somebody to tell us something. But you see, they've even taken the colours, so the slate of our roof and the sand, you know, that's all in there. So it's kind of coming across in lots of different ways at you to get that message across. And they also looked at the whole strategy of finding your way around, whether that is digitally by the app, a hard copy map that you can carry around with you, You Are Here maps, and the finger posts. And in the end, we got some money for these. I think we've got 14 finger posts and 85 fingers pointing all over the place, generally to places that you can't see. So the locals would say, well, what are you pointing down there? There's no shops down there. Well, actually, there were shops, but not the shops that, you know, they went to all that often. Or they would say, why aren't you pointing down here? There are the shops where you can see them. You don't need to point to them. So it's a bit of an education locally as well. But that whole strategy and the colour coding is something that we've kept going. They also redesigned the website, so we got a new look and feel there. I think that was about the fourth reinvention of the website. We've got another one since then, and it was all about the kind of do messaging. And then really the whole thing about community tourism, and we can only do so much, but we've got to have a partnership with the businesses that are in town. And so we started delivering World Host training, really customer care, some very basic customer care, along with the smile and so on. And then we found that within that room, you would maybe have people from different hotels realizing that they'd got the same challenges. And, you know, if they ran out of a bottle of whiskey, well, they could just go and borrow it and then pay it back. And that would be great, you know. And so all of a sudden, rather than just thinking about their own businesses, they were thinking about marketing Dornoch as a whole. And, you know, if one B&B is full, much better to say, but there's this B&B down the road than let them go off somewhere else. So people could see that if we all work together and try to keep people in Dornoch, that it was to everybody's benefit. And we formed a business group in 2014, and the challenge was to get £20,000 of that private money from the businesses, which we could then leverage up to get £80,000 to spend in our new branding. And I was put in touch with Visit Arran by High, and they're several years ahead of us. And basically they had decided that, you know, as a community doing this, you put in a whole lot of volunteer hours. And she said, really, if the businesses aren't willing to put some money behind this to make it happen, what are we doing it for? And you've just got to be brave and say, look, we're not going to do this anymore unless you give us 0.3% of your turnover. So we had a big meeting, and I stood up and said, 0.3% of your turnover is what we need. And Grant Swords in the Royal Golf put his hand up and said, I'll give you 0.6 for the first year. And then after that, you know, I don't say they all immediately fell behind. It was quite a long job, going backwards and backwards and backwards for people to sell the story. But we got that 20,000 committed within a month. And that was really the turning point, because before that we had £3,000. I thought it was quite good. But, you know, when you see what you can do when you get more money, then if you've got, you know, the time and the support to do that, then it makes a huge difference. We're also lucky that a new funding stream had come on board, Coastal Communities. They were very good to work with. It was actually administered by the lottery, very, very helpful funding officer. We got 100,000 the first time and came back and said, I've got 100,000 left, do you think we can spend it? Yeah, could do that. So that was very good. And that let us get a member of staff in place to do the marketing. So we weren't just down to volunteers. And I think that is really important if you possibly can. Part-time posts are fine, but just get somebody whose job it is to do things and don't rely on the volunteers to do everything. But we're also a community organisation ourselves. We've got 220 members, and we do other things beside tourism. We thought we might buy the courthouse when the court service left, but when we looked at that, it was really not something we could work ourselves. It was £1 million we had spent in the building. We couldn't see a business plan, but we got involved with another investor, and it's now a privately owned building, but we did some crowdfunding so we could move the visitor point in there and make sure that we had a really good service point. When we had this meeting with the businesses and they gave us the money, they also said, well, what are you as a community going to do for us? Because New Year is our busiest time other than August. But after you've had the street party, which is great, you all just go and party yourselves. And we've got all these visitors with money in their pockets and nobody open to take it. So that first year, we kind of worked with the shops and the businesses, and we produced a 3-day program, rather, not 3 year, so that you can go and do a loony Duke on the first if you're mad. We've had treasure hunts, we've had a concert in the cathedral, the shops open, some of them on the first, most of them on the second. So all of a sudden there's something for these visitors to do, and they're meeting with us, which what they want, and actually it makes good crack for us too. We also have a local website, so there's kind of two different messages. What you tell the tourists is not necessarily what you're telling your local members. So this is our local site. So actually at the moment we've got very good news that one of our community organisations has now got some building plots that will only be available to the local community. Last year we bought the police station in Dornoch and we converted it into a hub. This is the community room, and our current project is to build a new car and coach park, and the tar just got laid yesterday. So that's the way that we talk to our members, quite different from the Visit Dornoch. We have a monthly what's on listing, so that goes out to both our personal members and the business group, and that normally runs to 4 or 5 pages, and it certainly makes a difference to how long people stay if you can offer them more activities. We're very lucky in Dornoch that we already have a lot of community events that are marketed as part of the offering. So we start off with Fiberfest, which we just had a couple of weekends ago, which, as you see, is all to do with wool and nothing to do with Allbran, that people have been asking us that. And then we have community markets. They run every fortnight, May to September, in the Cathedral Green. And then we have a classic car tour run by Rotary. Pipe bands, that's another volunteer group, play every Saturday, and they haven't for the last 2 years, but we're looking forward to seeing them. The Sutherland County Show, the Highland Gathering, and these have been going for years and years and years, but they've been added to West Festival Week. That's certainly been running since 1970 something. The Whisky Festival, which was introduced by ourselves, is now run by the businesses and hotels that benefit, and so on. So that is really important. And then we have a kind of detailed listing for each month. repeating some of the stuff I'm saying there. So by the time we got to 2018, there's just 2 of these now, we actually have a leaflet that has a bit about the shopping, the food and drink, the stay a while, but has our full events calendar on the other side. So, you know, if you happen to be here in the summer, you might think, oh, I'll come back for New Year, etc. Or you maybe think, oh, my friend, she would like to come to Fiberfest and so on. So that's really quite a good marketing tool for us. And I think the key thing is this partnership thing, which I said at the beginning, I didn't really understand, but Hi now chairs quarterly meetings of all the stakeholders. And that's really meant that we've had the ear of people at the top of some of these organisations, which we wouldn't have otherwise had. I like that cat there, Pauline. So Visit Scotland were there, and we're at my Know Centre was in. We have a councillor on there. We've got board members who are also a member of DADCA, which is a community association which puts on these various events. We've got people that are part of UHI. We used to have the curator of the museum. We've got a community councillor, we've got the manager of the golf club, and so on. And it's really important because you know, these people go and spread the word, they bring their own ideas, and you just don't know what's going to come out of collaboration. So if you can get involved with other people, I think it is important. We're also members of North Wales 500, which I'm sure you've heard of. You'll have heard good and bad reports. And you know, that is true to say that, you know, we have been bringing more and more people. Not everybody wants to have more and more people, and there is that balance between what the community wants, and particularly that's been clear in COVID times, and you know, what the businesses want. We're also cruise liner business is kind of big up here. So the cruise liners dock at Invergordon, which is about 20 miles away. This year they've got 116 liners coming in. Now we often have had up to 6 coaches parked in the square, quite often for half an hour, which is a complete waste of time. And then they grumble about our toilets and go and spend not a penny, if you don't mind the pun. So that's really the reason that we're getting this car and coach park, because a lot of people that come for 2 hours actually spend some money and get to know the town. And to be fair to those passengers who are on these trips, the most common comment as they get back on the buses, we haven't had enough time. But you know, that's been organised by the cruise liner companies. We have this year got 2 independent companies from Invergordon are just going to bus people up for 2 hours and go back down. Also, I think if you're on the cruise, you paid for your lunch, so you want to get back and eat your lunch. So you want to come for either 2 hours in the morning or 2 hours in the afternoon, but don't give me lunch. So that's it. World Host Destination, we started that off in 2014. I think probably we should have been new, but they seem to have got awfully quiet. So I think we're still generally doing that to good customer care, and that brought us all together and was an important step on the journey. As I think any training would, if you just did customer care training yourselves, that would be enough. So because we get our money, we've continued to get our money, although obviously not so much in the last 2 years, but pre-COVID, that business levy, which came to about £27,000, paid for our staff. So we have Lucy on digital marketing, she works from home, so keeps our social media going. Our visitor centre, different hours in summer and winter. Dornoch Ambassador, we haven't had the last couple of years, but we're hoping we'll have somebody back this year. So that's somebody actually meeting and greeting on the street. We've also moved our visitor centre, it's gone to the hub, which is our conversion of the police station, and we're a few yards from the centre of the town now, and to get people up the hill is proving a bit of a challenge. So we're thinking actually somebody on the street again will probably be quite a good idea. And really, out of all of this, you know, we're not sure what's influenced what's going on, but we have to say, since we started, we have had new businesses and new events as a result. I suppose the other big thing we did is that we've got signs on the A9, you know, the big brown signs. That was about the most difficult job I think I've done in the whole of this time, of trying to get those signs up. But they do make a difference because they tell people that we've got a museum and the golf course and whatnot, and encourage them to come off the famous North Coast 500 for a few minutes piece. And these are just some of the leaflets. So we've got our kind of brand image now, so we can do our own design on Publisher, but using a template. So we're not paying for big designer fees, we're doing it ourselves, but based on a theme. And a couple of winters ago, we started this, let's extend the season, let's have different things on, let's have a proper festival. And we even managed that this year with, we had an outdoor market, we had Santa in the hub, we had a craft fair in the community centre, and all the shops were doing special things. So, you know, it's a reason to come to Dornoch. And I'm not going to look at this video because I have to tell you that as soon as you've got a video, one of the main businesses will definitely go out of business, or you fall out as a or whatever. But I will show you a video in just a minute. So this year, with support from Visit Scotland, we've run a Royal Dornoch Mix and Match. So really, there's more to golf, no, more to Dornoch than golf, or more to golf than Dornoch. And encouraged by Visit Scotland, we've used social media influencers. I didn't know what they were last year, to be honest. We thought we were doing quite well. We've got 17,000 Facebook likes, mainly following a competition where one of our main self-catering houses, a really big house called Ember House, put up a weekend surprise, and we can doubled our followers overnight. But the Wee White Dug came, well, the Wee White Dug has 234,000 followers. So, you know, if you start getting these people on, you just, you know, lift up your image. So I'll just go and have a look at the Wee White Dug. So the Wee White Dog came to visit us, and his owner writes up a blog, and they get lots and lots of coverage. And she puts it on Instagram and so on, and makes all these comments about the lovely wee dog and what good golf is and all that sort of stuff. And the other people we've been using are Lloyd and Fifi. They're a young couple from Fife. Well, she's from Fife and he's from south of England somewhere. And they've produced loads of little videos for us. They've done all these activities. We're now promoting paddleboarding and archery and so on and so forth. But I think that the nicest video they've done is this one. So what we wanted to do was to get some of our business owners to talk about Dornoch.
Well, I think my daughter's best friend, he came up here on holiday a couple of years ago, and he summed it up, because before he left, he said, "Come on, Maggie, this is a film set, right?" And I said, "No, it's real." And he said, "I've never been anywhere like it." And everyone that comes says that they sleep like a top, eat like a horse, feel so relaxed. And it's true. And because thankfully there are conservation orders on everything, on the architecture in town, it's not going to change.
Sometimes probably take it for granted living up here and being in such a beautiful surrounding and environment, and then especially in the spring sometimes, and then going into the summer, sometimes you're then just on a drive in the car and you sort of just look out the window and you think, oh my goodness, and it sort of takes your breath away, and sometimes it catches you by surprise, and then you sort of forget we do live in such a beautiful place.
Dornoch just has, it definitely does have an ambience that's lovely. It's just, you know, very much a Highland small town that, you know, lots of people come to enjoy.
It's just so nice and peaceful, but always like a buzz around the place as well, which is nice.
I think it's a great place just to kind of hang out and spend a little bit of kind of quality time with family and friends. There's some amazing walks. Simon mentioned going to Embo is an amazing one, down to Lochfleet. So I would kind of encourage people to kind of embrace that side of it. Obviously the golf's fantastic if you're into golf. I'm not, but if you are, it's a good thing as well.
I think that's the thing. I rarely leave the town. I spend the day, I'll walk out to Embo along the old railway line, and maybe walk back along the golf course, maybe have lunch out. Yeah, it's a lovely, my wife says I'm getting too insular. I rarely travel across the bridge. You've got everything on your doorstep.
And it is really welcoming and just a lovely, yeah, just like a hug.
So that's really all I wanted to say initially, and perhaps we could just open up to some kind of discussion there.
Thanks, Joan. What a wonderful story, and a real testament, I think, to the volunteers and the strength of partnership working in Dornoch. I'm ashamed to say I've never been to Dornoch, but I'm tempted. I'm tempted to come. Have you got a spare room, Joan? Okay, we'll just open it up for questions. As I say, there's just a few of us on this Zoom, so if you're happy enough to put your camera on and maybe even raise your hand just to ask if you've got any questions. I know I've got a few here, so I'll just open it up now if people want to ask Joan any questions. Pauline?
Yeah, it's not really a question. I just in the back of what you said, Yvonne, Joan, you're an absolute star and a real credit to Dornoch and Scotland, if I may say so. and your presentation was one of the best presentations I've seen in a very, very long time. So well done on the technology, but telling the story was fantastic. It's what's been achieved between the early dates where you had some ideas and how do we go about this to implement it. It's absolutely tremendous, and I've never been to Dornoch either, and
you have to come.
I definitely will come now. So I suppose one thing I picked up on, which has been something that's come up over all the events this week, I'm sure, is the volunteering angle on this. So volunteers are so important, and nothing would happen without mobilising the amazing people that do put their hand up to volunteer. However, what you said about a member of staff, somebody whose job it is to drive forward what everybody wants, is really important. So I think that definitely chimes with all the events that I've been to this week.
Yeah,
so well done.
It's a real issue, kind of volunteer fatigue. And I've done 10 years next year, and I'm going to stand down then, so I think it's time for some fresh ideas. But it's getting those new volunteers on board. But our feeling is that if we can get everything kind of sustainable with a member of staff, then to attract a board which actually directs and doesn't do as I have been doing, then that's going to be easier, because frankly nobody wants to stand in my shoes. But I would like to vacate them, so it's working out the best way forward. So that whole succession planning issue is definitely one that we need to consider.
Joan, Sarah's put a question in the chat, and something that always comes back, she's saying, from members, is the issue of connecting with the private sector at the beginning, and asking if you've any tips on that for us.
Well, I say this thing about training, if you can do something for them, that you all get involved in something together, or it could be running an event. It's actually kind of sitting around the table and sharing the workload, if you like, or the experiences that made the difference. You know, before, when I just went in and I was always asking people for a raffle prize or whatever it might be, then, you know, they get a bit fed up with you. But if you can start giving them something, for instance, running events that bring people in, then it's a kind of a partnership. And the resolution is tourism is everybody's business. But it's got to be a win-win situation. So I would say the training was the thing that turned us around, for people realizing that we were making a difference to their lives, making things better, and then in turn we could do something to help them.
Yeah, I think that, you know, at the very start of the presentation you said about the smile stickers, which is something which is very simple but has obviously, you know, really engaged businesses at that very early stage.
Yes.
And brought them on side, if you like.
Yeah.
One of the questions or points I was going to say is, you've got a very rich offer in Dornoch, and quite distinct. And how, you know, as that's grown and developed, and you've made Dornoch a place to visit in its own right, how did that initial momentum sort of build, and the innovation build? How did you keep going, if you like? Why did you keep going, and what came next? And
sometimes I ask myself that question. And I think at the beginning, when we really didn't have a lot of money, well, we thought it was a lot of money to get £1,000 to set up a website. And you were part of this small towns network, and again, I think there were half a dozen towns up here, so Nairn and Alness and Invergordon and so on. And we were linking up with towns in Norway, and so and some people got trips to go out there, and it was that kind of shared experience, which I know you've done a sense Scott, and you know, that was quite important to feel you weren't on your own. And then if you have these kind of just brainstorming sessions, it's quite often helpful if you have some kind of consultant that can lead on that. But it's amazing what, you know, a group of people will come out with of, you know, well, what would you like to see different in this town? And you get the post-its up and so on. And you can very quickly pull together something. But obviously it can be soul destroying if, you know, the top of the list is a swimming pool or something that you're never going to get. You need to start off with the easy wins of the things that you can afford, you know. So even that video I showed you at the end, if you get anybody in your town that's any good just with a phone now, and you've got local personalities, that is not a difficult or an expensive thing to do. But back on the principle that people buy from people, that if you can actually, you know, get people out there telling your story, well, one, you're spreading the load, but you know, you're making the place real to somebody else out there. With social media, you know, £20 on a paid advert makes a huge difference. So I think there are a lot more opportunities if you don't have a big budget to get going, and if you get a few of those easy wins, then people will come in behind you, and then you can look at the bigger things. And I mean, I haven't really done much in the way of fundraising or filling an application form, and some of them are quite daunting. But you know, something like Awards for All, you'll get up to £10,000 if you can get something, and if you can understand. And so there's so many free webinars going now for training. But when I first started, I did not know the difference between outcomes, outputs, inputs, and all these things. And I went on a course, and you know, something about outcomes are the difference. And you can't say increasing, decreasing, improving, whatever. You've not got any. Whereas outputs is I did 20 people trained and whatnot, and the outcomes is, well, what difference does it make? You know, if you can't answer what if, you've not got an outcome. So some of those simple things, I think, is something that we can share through the network and help people, you know, get going. And you know, if you get a couple of little grants and make a difference, get a leaflet done, get a map, then you know you're making progress.
Okay, have a plan. Dornoch obviously is a tourism destination in its own right, but have you ever, one of the questions is, have you ever been involved in any other collaboration or collaborative work with any other towns nearby? So have you linked up?
Well, I suppose through the North Coast 500, and particularly during COVID, we had regular meetings, and each kind of village would send somebody along and talk about what they were doing. And that was helpful. So we, for instance, had done a survey of our members to find out what they thought about things opening up in 2020, how they felt about people saying, well, what would make them feel more comfortable. And there was all those regulations, if you remember, that something would happen in a month's time and 2 months' time. And the near things they were kind of comfortable with, and the further off things they weren't. And so we just took it steadily, and we got some big posters that had this protect, respect, and enjoy, and had the pictures of the face masks and so on, so that we were, you know, taking people with us, which is important.
Yeah,
we shared that with the other villages, you know, so they all, you know, some of them had different ideas, but we at least pooled those ideas, which is important.
Yeah, it really is community wealth building in action. You know, you've certainly demonstrated, obviously, the community involvement and the jobs and the keeping spend local and the new businesses that have opened as a result, and the assets that you've taken on control of. So it's really pretty impressive. Has anybody else got any questions? I've got another couple probably, but I don't want to hog it if there's anything else. Norma, Claire, Russell, any thoughts or questions that you want to bring in?
Yeah, I was just going to, thanks, Yvonne. I was just going to ask Joan about the influencers side of things, because that's something that we've kind of looked at but not done anything on, and just possibly learning a little bit more about that experience in terms of how did you select the right ones, or the costs involved, and various aspects surrounding that. Okay, so
the costs are quite high. We wouldn't have done it without Visit Scotland support, I don't think. We have a project manager who was suggested by the golf club, because Neil Hampton, the general manager, is one of our directors, and that's helpful. So he put us onto this guy, Alan Minto, Scotland, golf began in Scotland or some such thing. I can send you the link. Anyway, he had worked with both of the influencers, so he suggested them. So Lloyd and Fifi had done quite a lot on golf in Fife, about things other than golf in Fife, I should say, and they've got good followings, and they do a lot of videos. Whereas the Wee White Doug, it's more blogs and photographs, which he has a huge following in terms of that reach. So I think each visit from the Wee White Doug was £2,250, and she came for a weekend. And to make that work, you've really got to get complimentary accommodation meals, otherwise you have to pay for those as well. So we did quite well with them, but Lloyd and Fifi have had 5 visits, so they're about £1,000 a visit, but I'm running out of people now to ask for free accommodation because they've been so many times, so we may have to pay for that. So you have to build that all in. But in terms of the number of video views and the reach and so on, we've hit all those kind of targets that our project manager had set. And again, that's not really my area of expertise to know how many hundreds of thousands of people might click. It seemed very ambitious at the time, but we seem to have reached that. Whether that turns into bookings, I find that very difficult to get that final connection. All I can say is since we've been doing all of this, more people have come to Dornoch, but it's difficult to say because of this particular advert, people stayed in this hotel or whatever. So you're kind of doing it as a leap of faith and see what happens.
Thank you. Just one more quick question. Sorry, Yvonne. You talked about the brown road sign being the hardest project. It's interesting because I've just had an email saying that they're not accepting any more applications unless you basically jump through more hoops. But yeah, any tips and tricks on that one? Or
well, I think that what we found out, you have to go through Visit Scotland, and people have to be listed in there. So for instance, the cathedral, which used to appear in our site, they could only go on there if they would sign up to Visit Scotland, and that meant they had to do some training. And they have a welcome club, welcome tables, I think they call it, and they have loads of 60 volunteers who man the tables in the cathedral, and they're a great asset. But whoever led that group at that time felt that, well, no, a church was obviously some people came just to worship, and that it would be wrong to learn how to put the case over better for tourism. Therefore, they refused to become members. Therefore, their name could not appear in the brown sign. So that was the first difficult bit. And the next bit is kind of working with Bear and Transport Scotland, and if you're on the main road you have to deal with them, and then you have to stop the traffic and you have to get somebody involved in putting traffic lights up, and then it's not just a sign you have to worry about, they tell you at the end, but you need to have a little sign at the actual junction that says tourist attractions. So where you thought you had 2 big signs, you've actually got 2 big and 2 little ones, but each pole costs X amount to dig into the ground, blah blah blah. So our problem was we were trying to get it, as you always are, I think, to get the grant spent by a certain time, and you think, oh, plenty of time for this, and then you find that these people take forever to make their mind up, and then they can't do it at the last minute because something else comes up, and it was just very frustrating. And you can't have too big a word on, like all your guy, because the wind load factor comes into account. So we couldn't have history links museum, we couldn't have history links or something silly. So just all sorts of rules and regulations, not helpful. But great if you can get it done.
thank you.
Keep fighting the good cause, as they say, Russell, and hopefully you get them.
Yeah.
One of the things I was going to ask Joan is, we often think of businesses as competing with each other.
Yep.
But you've spoke about that level of cooperation and the shared sort of vision. When did it get to that point?
Well, I suppose we started it off when we had things like the Customer Care Award. So we had this annual dinner off season where we present this award. So, different people will be sitting at the tables with one another, or, over a glass of wine or whiskey or whatever your triple is. Then people kind of got to know each other. And certainly some of the hotel owners didn't even live locally. So they, they hadn't necessarily mixed with people socially. They did their job and they went home. So that was important. And then, as I say, the training. And then when we did the Dornoch Whisky Festival, community involvement and the businesses and getting that going. So we were meeting with them you know, once a month and deciding together what the programme would be, and we're working with the local distilleries. So it was that kind of shared experience and doing a project together that then, you know, those bonds are built up and, you know, take you a long way.
Yeah, and I think that's something that comes through all your presentation, is having that focus, you know, whether it's the customer care, whether it's joining up the accommodation to make sure that you know, the businesses have what they're looking for, but have the capacity to give as well in terms of what the community-led tourism is looking for. So it's finding that balance throughout to get the win-win.
Well, when we had, during COVID, we set up a WhatsApp group of the businesses just so that they could, you know, share things amongst themselves. And I think it was the end of the first year when in the kind of autumn that it decided that we had to go outside again if we were going to have drinks. And of course, but then it's getting a bit cold in Dornoch. And, you know, within a few hours of that announcement, we had, you know, a B&B up there. I can't go into my patio heater, I don't need it now, and I can go in the pub. And there was this feeling that, you know, we're all in this together and we can help one another. And some of the businesses also helped provide food for, you know, local people who were running short. So there was that real kind of community spirit that came into being there. And the WhatsApp is still going on. Now, sometimes it's a wee joke that somebody will share just to, you know, lighten the load. But every week I get something in some notice or the other. So I'll put that on the website and then I put the link on the WhatsApp so that people are just being nudged gently to go and do things. And we also, when we, first year, I can't remember when it was, anyway, the Castle Hotel decided they just invite us all outside for a drink, but get everybody together when we've been doing all WhatsApp over the period. And it was really nice just to see people cautiously, you know, and that could be a bonding exercise, I guess.
Yeah, we're all in this together, and this obviously is the title of this session, but the action group and the other groupings really demonstrates that. You know, you've got the community there, you've got the public sector there, you've got the businesses there, and everybody's round the table as part of that decision making process and solution focused, I think.
And also when you've got the contact, so we're doing this car park and we're supposed to have a path from the car park up to the retail park. So I went to look last week and there's a big fence in the way. So I'm thinking, who's that? So when I get onto the ward manager, who, you know, I know now, to say, no, is this your fence? And he comes back with the Google Maps photograph showing, no, it's your fence. It was here when the old abattoir was here. But, you know, we've got that dialogue, and, you know, I get all sorts of questions asked of me because people know that I will know who to ask. And it's really through that partnership experience that has given us that edge to be able to do that.
Okay, no, that's really, really useful information, I suppose, and reminder about the strength of partnership, working in collaboration and what it can achieve ultimately.
Absolutely.
Norma, you want to ask something?
Yeah, it was going back a little bit to that Russell was asking about the influencers. Visit Angus, who are our DMO, have helped the community to produce an insider's guide to Angus. I think it's now maybe it's going on, we've all lost it a lot of time, so it's probably 2 years ago. We did an insider's guide, and it was interesting, Joan, to hear you say that the video that was the most popular was that one where the local people are speaking. I think our insider's guide included, you know, it was all about food and drink and favourite places to walk, etc., etc. So it's 100 unmissable experiences or something. We managed to get a bit of promo on television and things with that. So it's about that community-based voice coming through that the visitors like. So yeah, it's been successful. And again, we had this conversation in a meeting the other day about, you know, they've been using these influencers through Visit Angus, and it's about, you know, how do you know or measure or encourage people to try to measure and collect the data from you know, these people, you know, is it transferring into visitor stays, etc. So yeah, it's how do we capture that and not just be massaged, our egos massaged about the amount of likes and hits and things we get. So it is, you know, it is an interesting one.
So I think that's the most difficult part, is getting the data out of people. When we had the first, the Visit Scotland Growth Fund, we had committed ourselves to giving bed night data and it was like pulling teeth. You know,
Yeah.
Lucy, our marketing officer, she had to go and actually sit with some people with their diaries and type it into the spreadsheet to get that data. And every year we ask for that data, and fewer people give it to us. And the hotels are fine because they can just punch it out of their computer system.
Yeah.
But you know, we have 60 odd self-catering with more bed nights and self-catering than we've got in hotels. So it would be really good if we could persuade them to do that. But that is difficult. And in a small town, people don't want to tell you the turnover. So we ask things like, you know, how is your turnover compared to last year? You know, percentage rise and so on. And so we've got some idea. But I think just the fact that we see the businesses investing in you know, new bedrooms, overhauls, and new businesses coming, then you know, people would not be spending that money unless the business was there. And we also we could count visitors through our visitor centre when we were in the centre of town anyway, which was, you know, one measure which we did every month, that we could see what was happening. But I think now people are probably are not, well, certainly the last couple of years have not been so keen to go in to get visitor information. And obviously we have a lot of it also in our apps and the website. So yeah, it's difficult to get that tally all the way through. And we have an umbrella organisation, Venture North, now, that got the kind of money from High to be the destination management organisation for Caithness and Sutherland. So we basically said to them, well, actually, data gathering is your baby now. You've got all the money. You work out how to do it.
Yeah, I think that's been historically that's been really challenging, not just for yourselves, but for other areas and various systems. Was it Steam or Dream or whatever else, you know, were in place to try and capture that. So yeah, you could probably make a fortune actually if you could crack that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sarah's put a couple of things in the chat, and we've got apologies as well from Dr. Steve Taylor, the Director for Recreation and Tourism Research, that was going to join us today but then couldn't. So Sarah, I'm not sure what the first one a question or observation in terms of you know, something that you say comes up with members is the need for changing places. Signage, just come back to the issue with the brown signage.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it was just a comment. Yeah, that's something that came up in the accessibility session and something that's come up previously, that there's a need for signage and visitors need to know, especially if we're going to talk about tourism for all and talk about making our places accessible for everybody. And there has to be a shift in that. I think somebody.
And this is a question, I don't know, do you want to ask it?
Well, I think it was kind of answered at the time, kind of. But yeah, I just wondering about how valued you feel, you know, as a voice of the community. So I know that Visit Scotland and High obviously worked really closely with you at the beginning.
Yeah.
And you obviously have a good relationship with individuals within the local authority. But do you feel valued as an organisation? Do you feel like you are the organisation to come to?
Yes, I think so. Obviously, we've been around quite a long time, but I've done quite a few presentations like this, and you know, I think on the whole, the other partners at the table really respect what we're doing and what we've achieved. And obviously they've been supportive, the likes of High, of actually putting money where the mouths are and helping us achieve some of these aims. You know, we've worked on these 2 asset projects, which have been the big thing for the last few years to try and make us sustainable, i.e. not relying on volunteers. And you know, they have been big asks beyond the kind of tourism side of things, so we'll see how that goes. But yes, and I think on the whole, we're appreciated. You know, sometimes you get these snipes from businesses. That's always going to be. You can't please everybody. And at the moment, we're just looking at becoming a business improvement district, because that's the last bit of the equation to get that bit sustainable that doesn't then depend on me. Obviously, not all businesses contribute financially to us. Some choose not to. But clearly they get the benefit, if there is a benefit to be had in us promoting Dornoch. And the advantage of a bid is that everybody would pay whether they had voted in the ballot to support us or not, which would be good, and also to save chasing around for money, which I spend a lot of time doing, because clearly, you know, it's a kind of voluntary contribution, and if there are any other pressures on you, you're going to put us to the bottom of the list. So that would be helpful, but that's going to open a whole big consultation Again, every business has to be consulted on a one-to-one basis. They have to be able to feed into a 5-year business plan, and you just hope that from that you actually get a kind of consensus of what people want, because we're also trying to build in non-tourism businesses as being important in contributing to the overall bank balance, but also in what they want to see happening for Dornoch and getting that balance between tourism and non-tourism businesses. So fortunately that's going to be somebody else's job to do all that consultation, but they will have to go round and round and round the loop and explain the benefits, because people don't necessarily see things first time round.
Yeah.
And that, I suppose, is where you maybe get the benefit of a volunteer might go the extra mile, whereas if you are paying somebody, they'll probably only go for the hours that they're paid. But watch the space, I think.
Okay, are there any final questions? Because that's probably a nice note to finish off on. Sarah's put the link, I'll come back to you in a second, Sarah. Sarah's put the link obviously to the sessions for tomorrow, and you can sign up for the last 2 events through that link. Oh, just tomorrow's final session, sorry, not to, used to do that email first.
That was me. I was getting carried away with a cut and paste post. So, so my apologies. It's just the final tomorrow, but it's proving to be quite an exciting session with lots of people signed up. So please join in if you can.
Yeah, and thanks to people who have obviously attended more than one event this week, and hopefully you'll finish off the week and come along tomorrow. Sarah, I'll let you have the final point or the final question.
So my final question is to Joan, but actually it's to everybody else as well. So at the end of every single session, I've been asking, what are the key asks? So when we go into that final session tomorrow and we're sitting with the Scottish Tourism Alliance, who are in charge of the strategy, what's our ask, of the national bodies for supporting and empowering communities to go down this route? Is there anything in particular that you think that we should be asking for?
Money. You need, at the very least, you need to have a part-time member of staff to drive this forward. You can't expect every community to have enough volunteers to do this job. And if they did it properly and information was shared and experiences and learning and whatnot, then you could make a lot of use out of that. I mean, our digital marketing is 8 hours a week. That's not a lot, but it makes a huge difference. And you don't need all the other things in place then if you can just get your name out there, get a decent website, and even just social media, actually, to be honest, and some good videos makes a difference. So I would encourage them to, rather than put a community office saying you've got to do it all yourself, give them that little bit of help to get going.
I would echo that in terms of what I'm hearing from Joan at this session today, and say investment and also a project. Those quick wins are critical in terms of the development and getting buy-in and collaboration from everyone.
Yeah, I know. I was just going to say, I'm sure Sarah's already got a bullet point list that size for tomorrow, but I guess our thoughts are always, if I think back to the community-led tourism kind of campaign week we did some months ago, it was really saying take community and community-led tourism seriously. Get investment, empower communities to take a leadership role in this. And I think the other thing we said to the Minister, Yvonne McBride, when he came, and to the tourism guy at the government, was stop asking what community-led tourism is. Here, we're shining a light on all these amazing examples. And I think to some extent, I don't know if Sarah would agree, but we felt all of this was a bit under the radar in terms of the agencies that are meant to take some responsibility for this. So if anything, we just keep shining a light on the brilliant examples like you've outlined today, and also the many others that are under the radar.
Sarah, can I just check with you before I thank Joan, is all the sessions and the the videos and the write-up or the information will be posted on the website after the week?
Yeah, so not every session has been recorded. It's depended entirely on the session, but we have got a significant number of them.
Okay.
And we'll put them up onto YouTube, and yeah, we'll share information. But anybody who would like any contacts or slides or anything, just get directly in contact with me, and we can sort that out as well. But yeah, we'll make sure that people have got access to stuff going forward.
Okay. Well, if there's no final questions, I'll just thank you, Joan, very much. Really interesting and informative. And as I say, I'll put Dornoch on my list of places to visit. That beach looks great.
It's stunning, yeah.
Stunning.
Yeah.
I
And
have to
thank
say,
you,
I went
everybody.
when it was very cold and it was still lovely.
Yeah, we're in Scotland. There's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing, as they say. Thanks to everybody for joining us this afternoon, and hopefully you can make tomorrow, but if you can't, then there'll be information hopefully from the sessions that you can catch up and have a good evening.